Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Welcome to Season 1, Episode 12 of the WeCOACH Podcast on Wisp Sports. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with some of the best and brightest women coaches, leaders, and industry experts in the world of sports for fun and inspiring conversation. I'm your host, Megan Kahn, Executive Director of WeCOACH. This podcast is a co-production of WeCOACH and Wisp Sports. WeCOACH is a premier nonprofit organization committed to recruiting, retaining, and advancing women coaches of all sports and levels. Through our programming, events, and engaged community, we are empowering female coaches and inspiring the next generation of young women who dream of following in their footsteps. Today's guest has selflessly given her life to bettering the landscape for female coaches. Marlene Bjornsrud's career spanned more than 40 years as a former coach, administrator, and advocate across the country and internationally. Listen in as we dive into her career journey and how now, even in retirement, her deep-rooted passion for making a difference through sport continues to fuel her. I'm thrilled to welcome my dear friend, Marlene Bjornsrud, to the WeCOACH podcast. Marlene, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Megan.
For our listeners who don't know maybe a little bit of our history, she and I had an opportunity to work together when you were serving as our executive director of the Alliance of Women Coaches. Now I get to put you on the hot seat.
Oh, good.
I promise it won't be painful. It's going to be fun.
I'm ready.
So we're going to start out. I'm going to take you down memory lane. Can you walk us through what it was like growing up in the 60s and how your path into sports took off?
Well, yes, as a child in the 60s, where I lived in Colorado Springs, Colorado, there were very few opportunities for girls to be involved in sport at any level. When I was in high school, I had three choices. I could be a member of Pep Club. I could be on the Pom line, which did dances at halftime, or I could try out to be a cheerleader. And for those of you who know me, the Pom line just wasn't going to work. I was not a dancer. I got cut. I didn't even make it through the first cuts for cheerleading. So I ended up being in the Pep Club and actually had a great experience developing from just probably 20 or 30 members when we were sophomores to over 300 members by the time we were seniors. And that just meant cheering for the boys. There were two opportunities to play sport. One would be a powder puff football game in the fall. The other would be a powder puff basketball game in the spring. And it was just for fun. It wasn't serious. There were no coaches. It was just for the girls to get out and try and do one of those sports. And it was always fun, but there was nothing that was serious. The only thing that was really sports related for me was living in a household with 5 children and a dad who loved sport and insisted with my older brothers that even though I was a girl, I was allowed to play. And we played baseball, and we played a little football, and we played a little basketball. My dad put a hoop up in our driveway. So that was really the limit of my experience. I loved sport. I think I came out of the womb loving sports. Just was born into a moment in time where things were beginning to change. But hadn't quite changed to provide those same kind of experience that girls have now for me back as a kid in the 60s.
So at what point in your stage of growing up and early career did you start to see and understand and realize the impact of Title IX?
Well, Title IX was passed my first year in college, but as all civil rights law, it takes a while for it to actually be implemented. And my understanding is laws like that are typically implemented on the coasts first. And it takes a while to work to the kind of the heart of the country. I don't think that I really saw change happening until 1978. So 6 years after the law was passed. And I had finished college and was living in Phoenix and got a call from the men's tennis coach at Grand Canyon College, now it's Grand Canyon University, saying that they had begun a women's tennis program, but they had finally received funding to actually pay a coach. Up until that time, it was all volunteer, and asked if I would consider that position. So, of course, I was very excited that it was going to be a paid position. And then I found out that the salary was $1,000 a year. So it was, I was acutely aware that change was beginning to happen, but that it would happen very, very slowly. And as you know, we're still how many years into Title IX, and pay is one thing that still isn't equitable between most men's and women's programs.
Absolutely. So you had never even really considered becoming a coach until you got this call.
Correct. I was teaching tennis. Tennis was something that I picked up rather easily in high school, and then played when I moved to Phoenix for college. I was able to play every single day of the year there, and developed enough proficiency that I felt like I could apply for a job as a pro or an assistant pro at some of the country clubs. And so that's what I was doing. But I'd never really thought about college coaching, again, because it was, for the most part, you were donating your time. And it wasn't that I wasn't willing to do that, but it was that I wasn't able to do that. I needed to have income.
And how many years did you coach?
Oh, that's always a good question, Megs, because I coached for, I believe, 3 years, and then I left, and then I came back, and then I left, and then I came back again. So I think over the stretch, I coached 10 years, but it was separated. It kind of had to be broken up. And again, that's because I had to go where I could make a living. And as much as my first experience of coaching at Grand Canyon was so great, in fact, we won the NAIA championship in 1981, the first year the NAIA and NCAA offered women's championships. Our team won that championship, but I had opportunities to make a living in other means. So I had to step away, and then kept coming back. And each time I came back into the world of college sports, it was obvious that the law was taking effect, and maybe that some institutions were making changes because it was the right thing to do. And so each time I came back, it seemed to get better and better.
Mm-hmm. And we can hope it can continue to get better and better.
Yeah. I would never have dreamed that this far into the implementation or the passage of the law that we'd still be hoping that it gets better and better. But that's where we are, and that is what civil rights law always entails.
Absolutely. So then you coached, and you were in and out and in and out. One of your transitions out, including a step into administration. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, actually, that happened because the last year that I coached, I developed an illness where I was waiting to have surgery after the season. So I had to coach from a chair, basically, my last probably 2 months. And I had the surgery, and just during that time, I think any kind of illness or surgery causes you to have a pause and allows you the luxury of looking back and looking forward. And it was at that time that I really felt like, you know what, I think that I would be a good administrator. And I felt like I needed to be off my feet and out of the sun. I mean, the Phoenix sun can be so brutal on your body. And I was just ready for a change. And thankfully, I worked for an athletic director who I had developed a great relationship with. And he just said, you know what, let's look at making you an assistant AD. And he said, what I want you to focus on is you've experienced life as a coach. Now I want you to coach coaches. And your job is to make sure they have everything they could possibly need to be successful. And at a school like Grand Canyon, that at that moment in time, that didn't mean money. It meant every other kind of support that you could think of. And so I accepted that responsibility and that role and really enjoyed working in an atmosphere where every coach, every member of the coaching staff across all sports, that my job was there to support them, to lift them up, to help them improve their program. And I think there's been a shift now. I think that role is a little bit different now, but I'm so glad that I came up in a day and a time under the athletic director philosophy is that the coach is the most important. And let's make sure that he or she has the opportunity to be as successful as they possibly can.
Yeah, that's such a great point, because now, and not that it wasn't then, but it's all about the student athlete experience, and the coach is sometimes tasked with, the things that go along with coaching today, whether it be the mental illness or the other hot button issues that we know are happening, but the coaches don't have support and resources. They're no longer necessarily that link.
Sometimes I've gotten the impression that there are athletic directors that look at the coaches as a dime a dozen. It's, if you can't do it, or if you don't want to do it, or if you're going to do it but complain the whole way, we'll just find somebody else. And it is about the student athlete. And I think that there are ways that you can do both. Because ultimately, the experience of the student athlete is going to be determined by the coach. And if the coach feels isolated and unsupported, if an AD is going to open his or her door to parents more so than a coaching staff, then it's a really tough place to be. So I'm just thankful so often that I got to work for an athletic director that understood it differently and felt that the coach was the most valuable person in the athletic department.
Mm-hmm. We're going to dive into a little more about that coach sport administrator or coach AD relationship here in a little bit. But I want to know now, take us from Phoenix to your jump out to the San Francisco, San Jose area.
I made that decision. Actually, we made that decision. I was in a relationship with Joe, who is now my wife. Phoenix was getting increasingly conservative, and working at a Southern Baptist school meant that we could not be fully authentic about who we are or were and what our relationship was. So I did what everybody tells you not to do. I resigned my position at Grand Canyon and was very candid with the athletic director, who continues to be a dear friend, about the fact that we needed to be in a different environment, where our relationship, where we could be fully who we were. And he was wonderfully supportive. Offered to keep me at Grand Canyon. He said, I will protect you. I'll do anything you need if you'll stay, but I understand if you feel like it's time for a move. So we made that move. I resigned my position. I drove to California. I went up and down the northern part of the state, meeting with anybody I could possibly meet with about positions that might be open. Went back to Phoenix, and the day I got back, had a call from the athletic director at Santa Clara University saying, I understand you were over in the Bay Area. We are just deciding and got approval to create a new assistant director of athletics position, and we'd like to fly you back to talk with you. So there I went, hopped on a plane, and couple days later, I accepted that position and had an incredibly great short time at Santa Clara University, which I absolutely loved. And during that time was women's soccer was one of the sports that I was asked to supervise. And again, helped to improve. And Brandi Chastain had just been a part of the women's Olympic team that won the 96 gold medal. And so she and I became great friends. And next thing you know, 3.5 years later, I'm moving into the world of women's pro soccer alongside Brandi, Julie Foudy, Mia Hamm, and those other great players from the 99ers. So I always look at every move in a career as being something that has the possibility of shaping life in ways that you don't even anticipate. And that was just one of those moves that totally changed my life.
Yeah. So you've certainly had success at NAI. You were at D1. Now you're in the professional ranks as GM of the Cyber Race. Talk a little bit about your experience there. What was happening?
Well, after the 99 Women's World Cup, where Brandi famously ripped her jersey off and was on the cover of every magazine. I think I understand that she's been, to this date, is still the only person who's been featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated, People, and Newsweek in the same week. So that was just a moment in time that was absolutely spectacular for women, not just in soccer, but all women's sport. And when Brandi kind of blew into my office one day at Santa Clara University, closed the door and said, we, meaning the U.S. women's team, are going to form a pro league of our own. And we want you to consider to coming with us and helping us. And I had no idea, if those of you who know Brandi, that she thinks very, very big. And I had no idea exactly what that would all look like. But she emailed me back again that night and said, I'm serious. Would you consider leaving Santa Clara and helping us form this league? And I did. And it was an absolutely amazing experience working with the most recognizable women athletes in the world and helping them construct a league that would be the first full-time women's pro soccer league in the world. The difficulty of creating something out of nothing, I think, was probably the biggest challenge of my professional career, but definitely the most fulfilling in terms of pure women's sport and trying to create something where athletes who deserve to actually make a living at their sport could do that. And Megan, when I talk about make a living, it's important for people to understand that Brandi, Julie, Mia, all those guys made less than $80,000 a year. So it wasn't like it was this huge money-making machine for them. The lowest paid players made $25,000 a year. And when you're talking about a franchise being located in the San Francisco Bay Area, one of the most expensive places in the nation to live, there were real challenges about how to make that happen for them. Unfortunately, the league only lasted 3 years, but I think it had much to do with the terror attack of 9/11 and the fact that so many corporations at that time decided to divest themselves from anything but the most necessary core reason for being. And we were owned by cable television, by Comcast, by Time Warner, by AT&T, and they all just felt like they couldn't absorb the blow of what had happened on 9/11 and continue to keep this league alive. So unfortunately, we went away. But on the other hand, we started something that was very special. And it's taken 2 more iterations, but it does appear now that the Women's Pro Soccer League is here to stay. And it's really fun to look back and feel like even though our league failed, we did lay a platform and a foundation for the other leagues to build on and hopefully find a business plan that helps them succeed.
There's no doubt the women in the league today are standing on the shoulders of the likes of you and Brandi and Mia and Foudy and all of those that played a part in founding that first league. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. And they understand that. Last year, I got to do a little bit of kind of personal leadership, personal development work with the players of the Orlando Pride. And, Alex Morgan, Marta from Brazil, Ashlyn Harris, those players understand that. They know that it's those who came before that is making this possible for them now. And you just think there's got to be generation upon generation of women who are all standing on the shoulders of those who came before. Certainly, I am crystal clear on the shoulders of some who I benefited from their work. And I think it's important. Julie Foudy would always say, it's all about turning and pulling the next young girl along behind you. It's never about what you do for yourself. It's about who you turn and pull along. And I think that's why women's sport is growing, and it's what we always need to be reminded of. We have a great responsibility to those coming behind and following in our paths. And you know that because that's the importance. It's one of the important things that the NCAA Women Coaches Academy teaches, that we're not in this alone. We've got others beside us. We've got those who've come before us, and we've got those who are coming after us. And it's very important to understand how interconnected we are.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about that. You mentioned the NCAA Women Coach Academy. So after you left the Cyber A's and then you founded Bossy with Brandi and Julie and had a tremendous run there, and then came on as executive director of the Alliance back in 2014. So you were there 2 short years, but those were crucial years for the organization. What stands out as the highlights from your time with our organization?
Well, probably working with you,
of course.
and that is a highlight, and that's why it's so much fun now to watch the amazing things that you're doing with the with WeCOACH and with the academies. I think that every organization, especially nonprofits, which is what WeCOACH is, every organization goes through an evolution. And I just happened to be in a 2-year stretch where there was lots of evolving going on. We were at the point of trying to make a determination, what are the absolute core programs that we want to hang our hat on? How do we create a budget and a fundraising plan to make those programs successful? And how do we staff appropriately? So I think those were the things that certainly as I look back, I'm proudest of. I think the staff that we had was tiny, and we used to say a small band of women trying to make a huge difference in the world. So we were very, very small. But we made some decisions that now you have been able to take and really, really grow and groom. That whole idea of starting kind of for those who've come through the academy to be able to come back again and refresh themselves and interconnect again with the women coaches community. That little vision that was just a kind of blip on the radar screen for me, now you've taken and you've grown it into something extraordinary. So those 2 years were really, really important. I feel like I was able to do what I was asked to do. And then I was able to hand the baton off to you as the next generation leader that was going to take what we did and really build on it, which you've done beautifully. And I don't just say that because you're on the call, but it's true. You have the exact gifts that's needed to take the organization another step.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. It was an awful day. I can remember to this day sitting at your table when you told us you were going to be stepping away, and it was awful, but beautiful things have come from it, and we're continuing to make a huge impact. I want to talk about, because you didn't bring this up, but when I look back at your time with our organization, one of the most profoundly impactful things that came about was the beginning of the Japanese Women Coaches Academy, and how that was birthed from them coming to our academy in 2014. So kind of bring our listeners up to speed what's happening with the Japanese Women Coaches Academy.
That is, I don't use the word privilege without being really thoughtful about it, but being part of the creation of the Japanese Women Coaches Academy has been this significant privilege for me, a real honor to have Etsuko Ogasawa, who is the director for the Japanese Center for Research on Women in Sport, look up and find us in the U.S., come here with 2 other coaches and colleagues, experience the NCAA Women Coaches Academy, and then go back to Japan and work frantically to find funding to get it in place so they could begin something that would mirror that same kind of work with their women coaches. Japan does not have a lot of female coaches, certainly as head coaches, especially in their Olympic sports. So they created this wonderful academy that is so much like the NCAA Women Coaches Academy that you're just so acutely aware that the environment, the focus, the purpose, the mission are all the same. It's just delivered in a different language. And their country is supportive of their efforts because Tokyo will host the 2020 Olympics. And they really do want the world to see that they value women in leadership positions in sport. So that's the purpose of their academy. They just meet one time a year, and they primarily draw coaches who are Olympians or Paralympians who have finished their competitive career and now want to go into coaching. And it is just such a beautiful, I think for anyone to take a body of work and say, we want to do this in our country, that is just the highest form of flattery. And I just think it's been such a beautiful partnership between the country of Japan and what's happening here in the U.S. through the NCAA. And now I was the only American to be going at first. And now Nicole Lavoie has joined the faculty, and the great Liz Hansen from Australia. So it sure gives the flavor of the NCAA academies in a different country, but it is so profoundly good.
Yeah. And it gives me chills even us just having this conversation about it, and to watch that come to fruition over there.
Yeah. Well, and the world will see. And in 2020, as we're watching TV, I keep thinking, what would it be like to see every Japanese Olympic team have at least one female on their coaching staff? And that's the goal. So that I think that would just, I don't think I've ever seen a more ambitious group of women who have set their sights on something and are really going for it. So I would have no doubt in my mind that they're going to achieve that goal, and that the world will see it in 2020 Olympics.
Absolutely. You've touched so many different people and organizations in your career. And I kind of want to use this as a springboard for us to talk about the larger landscape for what you're seeing specifically for women in coaching.
Even though I consider myself retired now, I spend hours each week in conversation with coaches, either by phone or Zoom, or in Colorado Springs with coaches here. And I just see that the landscape is getting so much more intense at every level, D1, D2, D3, that it seems that the actual skills of coaching are consuming less time and other demands are consuming more time. And the one thing that I sense from conversations with so many coaches is fatigue and asking themselves the question, how much longer can I do this? So what it keeps driving home to me is how important the work of WeCOACH is, and how important it is for women to understand that we need each other, that we've got to be in each other's lives. We've got to figure out how to carve out that time to sit with each other, to look in each other's eyes, to listen to each other, to be great sounding boards and advice givers if asked. Because it just seems like at the college level, coaches are being worn down. And it probably goes back to what we first started talking about is administrators are running businesses now. They're not necessarily there to make sure coaches are supported and are successful. So I have concerns. And it could be that I'm just the one that they call when they're feeling that way. So I may be reading something that's not there generically across the board, but there certainly is a significant sample size of women coaches that I talk to quite often who are just running at a high level of fatigue. And that is a huge concern for me because I don't know how it's going to change. I think it's systemic to the college environment. And perhaps it's that we need more athletic administrators, athletic directors who are going to really give themselves to the coaches, trusting that if the coach experience is great, the athlete experience will be great as well.
Well, and I want to know, what advice do you have because I know you receive the calls, I receive the calls, we all receive the calls and the outreach when things are not going their way. So what advice do you have for these coaches to reach out to stay in the profession?
Well, I always feel that the best advice I can give is that coaches need to find time to pause and to take care of their body, their mind, and their spirit. Because I think coaching at its most foundational aspect is a calling. There are those that go into it as a profession, but more than anything else, it's a calling. And I think that the lifestyle of a coach can put her in such a spin and at such a frantic pace. It's like we call our puppy when she chases her tail and just spins out of control. We call her the whirling dervish. And I feel like that's what happens in the world of coaching. And there's so little time for them to stop and look at themselves and take their own pulse, take their own temperature. And I oftentimes find that if coaches will do that, they will find in themselves a way to stay, because it's not going to be external. It's not a matter of putting up more and more external props for them. I think it's teaching them how to dig deep within themselves and find the sustenance they need, the rest they need, the refreshment they need to keep going, or have the courage to change careers. And you and I know, Megan, the last thing we want is for women to leave the coaching profession. But if her calling is elsewhere and she knows it, she has to follow that. There's something about following your heart that is a lost art but is so profound in terms of people being in places where they can make their greatest impact, and not just going with conventional wisdom. So I always believe that the answers are within. They just need to stop long enough to really look at those things and make decisions based on what they're seeing in their hearts.
Yeah, and we know self-care is near and dear to your heart. You talk about it at the academies now. You actually teach a session on it, and getting these coaches to hit the pause button long enough to listen, to care for themselves, their body, mind, and spirit. Do you have some takeaways you could offer our listeners for today on that, on how to pause?
You know, I read this great book a long time ago by Dean Karnassus, who's an ultra marathoner. And he talks in one chapter about learning to rest while you run, and how he got to the point in a 100-mile race that he really could almost sleep while he continued to run. Now, that's an interesting concept to me for coaches. Because I think that there are some ways to learn to pause inwardly when outwardly you're still working, you're still coaching, you're still on the sidelines or wherever you are. So I do think that there's some skills that people can adjust to. I believe that mindfulness and meditation can be done both in stillness, which really sets the foundation for mindfulness, but also in action. Those are a couple things that I think are skills that we can teach and that are important to learn. It's interesting, Megan, because the last 6 weeks of my life have been pure chaos. Jo had major surgery on her spine. Was hospitalized for 4 days and then required 24-hour care at home for the next 2 weeks. So 3 days after we brought her home, I got a call from my older crazy brother just to check on her and make sure she was doing okay. And 2 hours after he called, I got a call from his daughter that he had had a heart attack and died. And so my life went into this whirling dervish kind of spin as well. Thankfully, we have Joe's surgeon, my doctor. We have some medical folks around us who put their attention on me, which was really interesting, that a surgeon of all people would pull me aside and say, you need to find some ways to take care of yourself as you go through this. And one of the things that then my doctor said, as she kind of picked up that thinking, was she said, I'm going to suggest that you get a massage every week, which to me sounds like a huge luxury. But she said, you need your body to rest. You need your mind to rest, and you need to figure out some things to that are energizing to your spirit. So for me, that's hiking. So it's just been really interesting to be in a place where the needs around me, with my brother's family, with Joe, have been great. But to realize and have medical professionals tell me, you will be of no use if you become empty. You will just simply be of no use. And so I'm kind of, even as a 66-year-old retired woman, I am learning again what it means to take care of myself, and knowing that at every stage in life, self-care is important, and it may look different, but if it's neglected, then you're trying to pour from an empty cup, and you're not going to be impactful in anything you're trying to do. So, you know, my encouragement to all of us is to make sure that we find some things that replenish ourselves, replenish our body, mind, and spirit every day, even small things. so that we can continue to benefit those that we come in contact with every day.
Well, and I'm acutely aware of what your last 6 weeks have been like, and I'm so grateful that you took time to be with us on the show today, because I know what a struggle it's been for you and all that you've had going on. So I appreciate you being here.
Sure, Megan. Anything for you.
Well, thank you. But I want to go back, because as you were describing yourself and about too often pouring from an empty cup, but that's exactly what our coaches are, because our coaches are caretakers for their student athletes. They're maybe a caretaker at home if they're a mother or have children, or maybe even a caretaker for an elderly parent. And yet then they're putting themselves last, and then they are bottomed out. And that's no wonder they're burnt out then.
Yes, exactly right. And I get, those are the reminders that we need to give to each other all the time. I think just to have someone call and just say, how are you doing? That's authentic, that's not expecting you to say, oh, good, how are you? But to really say, how are you doing? What are you doing to take care of yourself today? And finding those opportunities to encourage each other, to help each other be just a little bit brighter, a little bit fuller. We just know that when we're pouring from an overflowing cup, we make such a big difference. And that's what I love about WeCOACH and the focus on women coaches, and the fact that the academies aren't just X's and O's. In fact, it's not X's and O's at all. It really is about both personal and professional development.
Yeah, and now with all of our accountability measures in place and Academy 2.0, we have these built-in mechanisms that continue to keep them connected and engaged, which is what we know women need to stay in advance of the profession. So,
yes.
I want to talk about your yayas, because that is the one thing you have not brought up yet, but I know how important they are to you, and they are a huge source of encouragement. So I know that's one thing that we talk a lot about in our academies, or when we're speaking with folks who are maybe struggling. So talk about your yayas.
I don't know how many years ago we became yayas, but there were 6 of us, 3 couples living in the Bay Area. And one, the Reverend Joanne Sanders, has been a dear friend of mine for years and years, and a dear friend of Joe's. We each knew her separately before we even knew each other. So Joanne was just always this constant in my life. She and her wife, Kathy, and Joe and I began just doing things with another couple, Marnie and Judy. But what we found is if we had a meal together at one of our homes, it was a 6 to 8 hour kind of experience. It was talking, laughing hysterically, telling stories, and then talking deeply with each other. And it really became something that was significant in all of our lives, where we felt like, let's put a name to this. We're going to be yayas. And that is a small band of women who are connected at the hip till death do us part. And that's what we are to each other. Interestingly enough, when we decided to leave the Bay Area and make the move to Colorado, Marnie and Judy decided to move back to their roots in Delaware. So now we feel like the yayas have the country covered. We have the West Coast yayas, the East Coast yayas, and the mountain yayas. But they are our go-tos. And it's kind of an unspoken code that if anyone needs anything from a yaya, the answer is always yes. Absolutely always yes. And there is something, especially as we all age, and none of us feel old by any stretch of the imagination, but as you age, things happen. The yayas were the first to call when they got word of the death of my brother. They're the first to call when there's a job change. They're always the first to call when something exciting happens. Even during the US Open tennis championships, it's like between texts and calls and FaceTimes, we feel like we're going through the tournament with each other. So there's something special about having that kind of to death do we part relationship with a group of women who just have that depth of commitment to each other. It's very special, very sustaining for us.
Everyone needs to find some yayas.
I think yayas are absolutely crucial.
I love when you always tell your yaya stories. It's so fun.
Well, and you know what? It's fun because through the years since 2014, when I started teaching at the academies, and the yaya story always comes up one way or another. I hear from coaches from all over the country through those years saying, I think I found my yayas. Or do you have any ideas how I can get some yayas? And it's just fun that does connect. And I think it's because we're wired for relationship. It's what we want in our lives. And to actually find those people and put a name on it and make those commitments, whether spoken or unspoken, makes it absolutely special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet you probably recently heard from your yayas regarding the U.S. women's national soccer team recent wage and gender lawsuit.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think it's wrong that U.S. soccer pays them 38 cents to the dollar compared to the men. I think that we're still in a day and time when lawsuits are sometimes it is the last and only resort that's really going to get attention. I think this has been building. I think what was 5 players that really kind of took them to task early on, and now it's the whole group. I hope they're successful because I think there's truth in the fact that they had a collective bargaining agreement that wasn't necessarily a great one. But I think it's time now for U.S. soccer to move into this new day and age and not operate like we're in the 50s and actually take care of the women who are representing them consistently at the highest level in the world. It doesn't mean that the men can't do that, but the men haven't done that. When I read what Jill Ellis makes compared to what the men's coach makes and how much they've wasted on men's coaches by hiring and firing and hiring and firing and paying out those contracts. I don't know how Jill does it and does it with such grace and such class. But it's time that U.S. soccer steps up and pays attention and does right by those women. So I'm cheering for them and pulling for them every inch of the way.
Me too. And I think the whole world's watching to see what's going to happen on this one.
Yeah. Yeah. And U.S. soccer better pay attention because they're going to look foolish to the rest of the world if they don't make this right.
Well, and we'll all be cheering for them in France this summer. That's for sure.
Woohoo. I wish I was going.
I know.
Some of us will be watching on TV.
I'll settle for that in my red, white, and blue.
Okay.
I want to know what continues to fuel you besides your coffee. What continues to fuel you?
You know that coffee's so important. I am fueled every day by the realization that I want to continue living out my purpose. That it's not in a structured way, but it is in a much more organic way of how I treat people, how I can be of benefit to anyone I come into contact with during the day. I love that at this point in my life, I still wake up really early in the morning without an alarm clock. I just wake up and I love having a cup of coffee and reading. And I've become, I don't know if I'd call it a prolific reader, But I have time now, not just to read, but to saturate myself in some really good teachings, good books that are helping me just stay full. And, I guess it's the luxury of being able to make sure my cup is filled with the most important things each day so that I can still be of benefit. I don't want to just ride off into the sunset. I want to be of benefit to people in the world, and I think the world needs us all to do that. So those are the things that fuel me.
Well, we're definitely not letting you ride off into the sunset yet. I still think you're making a huge impact through women in sport and for women in sport. So thank you for all that you do.
You bet. Thank you.
We end every episode with rapid fire. So I'm going to rattle off 4 or 5 questions, and you're going to come back at me with the first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
I am ready.
You just talked about reading. What's your favorite book?
Right now, I love The Alchemist. Absolutely fascinating. And if you can't understand what that is, it's Alchemist. The Alchemist. Love it.
I love it. That's a great book. Do you have a favorite quote?
No. That's a really good question. I am not much of a quote person. Probably the first thing that comes to my mind is that one about it has to do with it's a small band of people coming together who've always made change. I don't even know who said it, but Julie Foudy uses it and tells me that all the time. So whatever that one is, that's my favorite quote.
Perfect. We'll look it up. We talked about standing on the shoulders of those who came before you. Who were your role models?
One is a lovely woman named Chris Beyer, and she was my high school PE teacher and coach. She has come back into my life as my hiking coach. And I am so acutely aware every time we are hiking together that she is still my coach and that I am standing on her shoulders and that she really was the one at a most formative time of my life that lived what I wanted to be as a coach. And so I stand on her shoulders very, very proudly and feel like what a gift it is to see her almost every week now that I'm back in Colorado.
Wow, that is such a gift. I wasn't aware of that.
Well, and she can out-hike me to the nth degree. I'm planning on hiking Pikes Peak this summer in August. She's done that twice, so she's not, I'm just going with one other friend, but she again is that coach in my life that's helping me figure out how to train and how to get ready for that.
That's amazing. And it also proves we're never too old to have a great coach. I love it.
Exactly. We need coaches. I don't care if I'm 90, I'm going to have a coach. That's all there is to it.
So you talked about being back in Colorado Springs. I got to ask, what's your favorite brewery?
Oh, Goat Patch.
I knew you would say that. Good one.
How'd you know?
I don't know because I just know you. I know you.
Well, I'm telling you, if I could go there every day, it would be like my Cheers, where I'd walk in and they'd say more. I love that place. But, I think there are more breweries per capita in Colorado Springs than any city in the country. So we have lots of choices.
That is, you do have lots of choices. I almost said we, but yes, you do have lots of choices. So I can't end this episode, though, and not bring up your love of baseball. So I have to know, who's your favorite Giants player of all time?
Of all time? Of all time? Well, it's not Barry Bonds, for sure. You know what? I absolutely loved Cody Ross. And he's not a big name player now. He made his mark in the first Giants World Series run. Quality guy, quality human being that I just loved watching play. if I was to pick someone, I guess, of all time that I actually never saw play but got to know when I lived in the Bay Area, it would be Mike Krukow. He's was a pitcher for the Giants. Now he is one of the broadcasters. And he and I met one day, and he's very tall, and he grabbed me by the shoulder and he said, "Look, if you ever need me, I'm your man for Title IX." He said, "I became aware a long time ago that I was going to have to fight for my daughter to have the same experiences as my son. And I'm so thankful for Title IX. And if there's ever anything I can do, you just call me." And so how could you not love a guy like that? You know?
How could you not? We all need male advocates and allies for Title IX. That's amazing.
Yeah. A good man. So I live in Colorado now, but I'm still a huge diehard San Francisco Giants fan. And I think that's never going to change.
Well, it shouldn't. It's where your heart is.
It is. Absolutely.
I am going to say you aced it. Do you like that tennis reference? You just aced our podcast.
Oh, that was good. I aced it. I hit it out of the park. I sank it. No, I guess that sinking it wouldn't be a good thing. So,
unless it was in golf, you could sink a putt in golf.
You're right. Sink a putt. I was thinking free throw, so I jammed it.
It is March Madness. That could be.
Well, thanks, Megs. I mean, what a great honor to be with you, and thank you again for the great work you continue to do. Every day, you amaze me.
Well, thank you. And right back at you. Keep inspiring all those young women and current female coaches we have through your magical touch.
Thank you. Will do.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is Wisp Sports Radio.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. We want to hear from you. Share your comments on Twitter at WeCOACH and at Wisp Sports, or on Facebook at WeCOACH Sports and at Wisp Sports. The show notes for this episode can be found on our show page at wispsports.com. Make sure to subscribe to Wisp Sports on your podcast player to catch each new episode dropping every other Thursday. Until next time, all sports, one voice, WeCOACH.